series of ritual immersion pools on the Temple Mount. So that when you come in, you can go in, immerse, metaphorically cleaning yourself, and then you can go into the temple. But you have to immerse first. For that reason, now we talk about baptism. But baptism is subsequent to this concept of immersion, ritual immersion, for the sake of driving away impurity. And by impurity, we're talking about a defilement that comes from status, not from actually being dirty. Not physical dirt. But you have contracted death by touching death. Therefore, you are defiled, so to speak. You are unclean. Now you have to go through a ritual immersion in order to be able to come into the presence of God. And if you were corpse defiled, it was a 7-day process. That was the most lengthy of all processes to come back into the temple. Didn't mean you couldn't have normal interaction with people. And by the way, almost everybody lived their lives in some level of uncleanness. So only would you go into the immersion pool again if you were going up to the temple. Yeah.
I like your description of like giving birth. Your blood's leaving you, stuff like that.
Yes.
What's the difference between a male birth versus female birth? Is it because the female has more life because she can reproduce?
Yeah, you're talking about Leviticus chapter 12, where they have to wait 40. Yeah, they have to wait different periods of time. The best definition I've heard of this, or the best explanation, is that the mother is serving the time for the baby in case the baby has blood loss. The female baby has blood loss. That's the best. Otherwise, I don't know what else is going on there. I'll be honest, but that's one of those ones that I kind of write down and go, when I get to the world to come, I want to sit down with Aaron and go, Aaron, what were you thinking here? What was going on? Why did it? Because there's all this discussion about chapter 12. Why does the mother, different time periods of impurity for a female child than a male child? So I don't know what the exact reasons are. I think there are reasons. What they would be, I'm not exactly sure. And the best explanation I've heard is the one I gave. If anybody has any better ideas, I'm open to them. That's the
well, women represent life. If you have a female child, it's a double life.
Right, and that's what most of the rabbis kind of go with, and we kind of think that's how they do it. Yeah.
From experience, I know that when a woman has a male child, she gets up and goes a lot faster when she has a female child.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that. I was died with my daughter. I died with my son, so.
I don't know. That's all right. Here's what I want to say, though. Here, go ahead.
In Leviticus 15, it's the bodily discharges making them unclean. And so in the beginning there's any man having a discharge from his body, and then later on it talks about an emission of semen, and so they're different. And so then what's the discharge in the first one?
Well, there are different types. I don't know how.
Vomit. That's what it was. Blood.
Well, you have how do I say this? Okay. You have STDs that could give you a discharge, but then you have normal discharge with relations. So there's two different types of things going on here. So yeah, it's an adult audience for the most part.
We don't need any play-by-play.
Yeah. No. So the bottom line is STDs versus normal relations. We'll talk about that one in private. Talk more about that later on. You have the word zuv used, which means to flow. This is why you have in the Gospels, you have a woman who is hemorrhaging. She has had a flow for 12 years, the text tells us. I suspect, and this is just my suspicion, that what would cause that, one of the things that would cause that, I've talked to OBGYNs, is that there's still part of the placenta attached after she gave birth that's still drawing blood. And so that's just my suspicion, because it's 12 years. You would be anemic. I mean, you'd be somebody who was seriously anemic to have that. So that's just my medical talking to people. Yes, Phil. I really want to get bogged down with this, but okay. Go ahead.
Reasons why you could not enter the temple. This is the reason why Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah stayed in Babylon, because they were made eunuchs.
Yeah, some argue that, yes. Yeah, that's the, yeah, I gotta say this, let me get to that. I want to make this statement going to the end of verse 9. It says, she shall be burned with fire if the daughter of a priest, if she plays the harlot. I would argue that that is a post-mortem fire, not a, she's not burned alive. So I just want to make that comment. So,
You've been doing it wrong all this time?
yeah, she wasn't burned at the stake. She was,
So when she died.
she died. She's I don't know how she's stoned, and then she is placed on a fire and burned. All right. Verse 10. Verse 10 says, he who is the high priest among the brethren, on whose head the anointing oil was poured, and who is consecrated to wear the garment, shall not uncover his head or tear his clothes. He can't even mourn. Then he's supposed to outwardly mourn. Nor shall he go near any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or his mother. Nor shall he go out of the sanctuary, nor profane the sanctuary of his God. By the way, this is, then later on in the book of Numbers, why we have the Nazirite vow. A person can actually enter into a Nazirite vow and enter into a quasi-priestly status, where you cannot marry father or mother, and you are consecrated as a priest, priestly status. It says this, and he shall take a wife in her virginity, a widow or a divorced woman or a defiled woman or a harlot. These he shall not marry. Now here's what's interesting. They wanted to keep the purity of the Levitical line. Okay, so we know who is a priest. All right. Here's what's interesting. We now have a book called DNA and Tradition by David Kleeman, in which he makes the argument, being a biologist, that they have isolated the genome of those who are Levites. That they have the 24 genetic markers. They took people from all over the world who said they were Kohanim, took a blood sample, and then said, you guys have the same markers. They excluded some people, they included some people based on these genetic markers. But here's what's fascinating. Maybe one of the ways we're able to tell who the 12 tribes are, and I don't know, I'm just putting this out there as a possibility, is that we'll have DNA testing that will say to people, we can put you into a particular tribe based on genetic markers if we can isolate which ones those are. That's a possibility, I'm just throwing it out there. Here's what's interesting. I will say this. If you look at Ezra, we had all these captivities. Michael mentioned these, we had Babylonian captivity, Persian captivity, all these captivities. What happens over time is people lose records of their families. This was what happened with the Holocaust. You got all these people who died in the Holocaust, and they had insurance policies with European insurance agencies. And the agency says, well, can you prove that they died? You got records? Well, nobody was issuing records in the concentration camps. So I'm sorry we can't pay out because, well, we don't know if they really died because we have no death certificate. Okay, that kind of thinking. Well, Ezra says to those who come back, he says, I need all the priests to come to me. And so people come to Ezra and he says, great, show me your paperwork. And they go, well, we don't have the paperwork. Ezra says, well, I'm not saying you're not a priest, but if you don't have the paperwork, I'm sorry, you can't serve. And there was a lot of people that were a little bit miffed at Ezra for this, okay? Well, same thing here. You have to have proof that you're a Levite. You have to be able to prove. Well, how do we know? I mean, after all these years, how do we know? So I'm just saying, maybe David Kleeman is correct in DNA tradition that there will be a genetic way of knowing who is and who isn't in these categories of different offices. All right. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. Now listen to this. He says this, verse 16, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron, saying, no man of your descendants or succeeding generations who has any defect may approach to offer the bread of his God. For any man who has a defect shall not approach. A man blind or lame, who has marred face or any limb too long. A man who has, it goes on to all these potential defects. I've told you in the past, I went to Society of Biblical Literature, and I went to the section, they have these different sections that you can go to. And one was a disability section. And I didn't know what I was getting into. If somebody had told me what I was getting into, I would not have gone in. So these were all papers by academics being presented on why the God of Israel didn't like people who had physical defects.
You know, like Daniel?
Yeah, so here's the problem. The sacrifice has to be whole, and the one offering the sacrifice has to be whole. So these individuals in this disability section of Society of Biblical Literature, they were giving papers in which they were saying, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob doesn't like people with defects. He won't let us in. He won't let us in the temple. We couldn't serve in the temple. We can't go in the temple, ever. And the truth is, that's right. But does that mean that God hates those who have disabilities and defects? No. I've said this in the past. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't go in for you. You can always have somebody go in for you and represent you. And in fact, don't the priests already represent everybody to begin with?
Yeah.
Hello.
So,
Yeshua.
huh?
I.e.
Yeshua. Yeah. So, on the physical level, on this plane, those who had defects. Why? Because here's the reason. The tabernacle was a picture in microcosm of the world to come. And since it was a microcosm of the world to come, where everything would be what it was supposed to be, only those who were what they were supposed to be could be in there to begin with. Now, somebody could go in there and represent you, but you yourself could not go in if you had one of these defects. You can't bring a sacrifice in there with a defect. You can't bring a person can't come in there with a defect. And it's not because they're a bad person. It could be a birth defect. Who's to blame for that? No one, necessarily. But you can't go in the temple or the tabernacle. And there were those who viewed this, there are those who view this as one of those strange things that you get from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And oh, by the way, this is the big issue. Here it goes. So this comes to the issue. Hold on 1 second. This comes to the issue that there are many, many people who, in traditional thinking, believe at their very core of their being, when you really push them and when you really press them, that we have two different gods. We have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the Jews. And by the way, he doesn't like people who have a defect. But we have Jesus on the other side who loves everybody. He will take anybody and everybody.
In fact, you have a defect, he'll make it whole.
Right. In fact, you have a defect. In fact, everybody that Yeshua healed was not able to go into the temple because of their defects. He in fact allows them to go into the temple. They were all people who could not, because of their defect, go in. Lepers, dead. If you're dead, you can't go in, right?
Hard time getting.
Lame, withered hand. Think of all the people that he heals, and these are all people who, because of their defect, for whatever reason, could not have gone into the temple under the present circumstances. And he says, in essence, now you can go in. Now you can go in. I will make you whole. Go show yourself to the priest, by the way.
Which is
offer the sacrifice that Moses asked you to do. He's not doing an end run around the temple, but he's saying, now you can go in. Now you can go in. So he actually makes it where people can go in. Hold on, one here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, if you were not whole and you guys went close to the temple, to the Holy of Holies, wouldn't you just like if you touched the ark, you would die, you know?
Well, the only example we have of that is, the closest example we have of that, two examples. We have Leviticus chapter 10, where Nadab and Abihu go into the holy place. and they offer the text just says strange fire.
Yeah, and then they get.
They get the smite button.
Yeah, right.
Then you have, God just hits the smite button twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll probably do.
Right.
Then you have, by the way, everybody, said it this way, everybody in the Hebrew scriptures and apostolic, we'll get to that in just a moment, everybody that dies instantaneously dies because they touched things that belong to the tabernacle.
Right, something holy.
Something holy. You touch something holy, Uzzah touches the ark. Boom. Instantaneously. Now let's fast forward to the apostolic scripture, lest somebody think, well, this is a different God. Ananias and Sapphira say, we have dedicated money to the temple. It now belongs, it's now sanctum. It now belongs, whether it's, even though it hasn't been given yet, it belongs to the temple. And they waltz in and say, hey, we gave everything. He says, really, you gave everything? Okay, boom.
Smite.
Smite button. Same thing with Sapphira. Both of them. Boom. I mean, quick. So if you mess with his stuff, you say, look, you mess with my stuff, my house, you mess with my things, then
Smite.
I hit pretty hard, I hit pretty quick. He gave a lot of grace for everything else, but things that were sanctified, that belong to the house of the Lord, those things he quickly deals with people who mess with them. So anyway, oh, by the way, there was another king. There was a king who decides that he wants to go into the, he thinks, well, I'm the king, I can go into the holy place. He goes into the holy place and he gets leprous. And they have to pull him out before God kills him. He gets leprosy, now he can never go back.
Well, even when there's another high priest that goes in, I think it was, he goes in and he doesn't believe what God says to him about his wife and.
Oh, that's Zechariah.
Yeah, okay.
That's Zechariah and Luke.
And he is totally 100% living, nothing wrong with him, and he comes out and he can't speak.
Right.
So God takes him away from him.
Right. Now that he can't be a priest anymore. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's fast forward this to us. All of us, we cannot approach God because of sin. It separated us. Yeshua, removing that sin, the veil was rent from the top to the bottom. Now we have the privilege of going right into the holiest of holies.
Right. I want to make this comment about the ripping of the veil. This is a thought that think outside here for a moment. I'm just presenting this before I want to that the holy place is a representation of this world, and that the place where the Ark of the Covenant is the world to come.
Right.
And so when the veil is torn, that basically what you have is that it's this world and that world are now fused. That there's access now from this world to the world to come. So that's how I view it. Yeah.
There was a question brought up whether the idea of renting your clothing or ripping it. When Jesus died, could the veil also be a second symbolic version of God tearing his clothes out of sorrow?
Yeah, that is possible.
Okay. It's firstborn.
Yeah, it's possible.
Firstborn.
Yeah, that's a possibility. It's clear as from the top to the bottom. I think that the picture may be that he is mourning, but also it's clear that he's making access between these two that were not available before. Yeah, go ahead.
It's the part that has always been bothering me about the India thing, you know?
Yes.
I think, though, the fact that it didn't help that the ark was on a cart, too, and it wasn't being carried by men.
Right.
So, but I'm thinking, well, if the ark were to fall and you don't help it, you know, I mean, not fall, it's going to get breakable.
This is the point, here's the point, is that David should have known better.